this is what reason helps to do. It helps us to think through life. And when we think through life, we're actually doing something that animals can't do. And when we do something that animals can't do, it actually elevates us above animals. And it helps us to understand that we are not just animals. We are what's called rational souls. And that rational part of our soul is the image of God in us. When
Right.
God said in Genesis chapter 1, let us make man in our image and likeness, the idea there is that God imparts into mankind, into an animal body and into a sensitive soul, a rational component, a rational part, which is called the mind. And when God downloaded the mind, which is the intellect and the will, God gave us the ability to be like him. He made us in his image and likeness because God is an intellect and a will. God is pure intellect and will. And so we believe God actually has no sensitive appetite. He has no sensory. He doesn't have the five senses. I've talked on controversially about this on my Instagram, but God doesn't have a body. God is spirit, and God is immaterial, and God has form but no body. He's not a composite. He is simple, utterly and completely simple. And so God made us in his image to be reasonable people. You see? God made us to be reasonable. And when we are reasonable, we're more like God.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So that's why reason is a big deal. That's why reason is such a massive issue, because reason has to do with truth, understanding truth as truth is actually a part of us. As we experience truth, we can understand truth, and the truth and us can actually be one, and not us creating our own truth, but the truth, which is reality itself, the creation of God. We can be one with it as we embrace it and as we ponder it and as we think on it. And this is, famously, this is actually how Adam was called to name the animals. Naming the animals is an act of participation in the truth, where you say, this animal really exists and it's outside of me, and God made it, and I get to participate in this truth by naming it. And by naming it, I have now caused reason to be now a part of this process. And there's now a component where we can participate in creation by actually having dominion over it through reason and understanding the order of it. And so Jesus comes, and Jesus doesn't negate that fact, but he actually elevates that fact. And in John chapter 1, verse 1, we see that in the beginning was the Logos, and the
Right.
Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. And so here we see that John specifically uses the Greek word logos to trigger the thought of all of Greek antiquity, because he's not using a Hebrew word. He's not using a word that would mean something special to Jews. He's using a word logos that would mean something special to the Greeks. And in that sense, he is appealing to the thought processes, the reason of the universe, the reason that created the universe. There is a reason for everything. There is an order to the universe, and not just in the laws of the universe that we call the laws of nature, there are moral laws. There are natural laws. There's an eternal law. And that eternal law is an eternal order, an eternal will of God that we can understand through reason. But if we reject the very foundation of that, which is reason, if we reject our ability to reason and our ability to perceive truth and our ability to receive truth and our ability to participate in truth, we're actually destroying the very thing that God wanted to redeem. We're actually destroying ourselves in that sense, and that's all we're doing. Because I say this when people sin. I say, that people, when you break God's law, you actually don't break God's law. We say, you've broken God's law. Well, actually, that's not true. You can never break God's law. When you sin, you don't break God's law, you break yourself on God's law. It's
Wow.
like when you jump off a cliff, you don't hurt the pavement or the thing on the you don't hurt the rocks at the bottom of the cliff, right? Those poor rocks, no, you hurt yourself. Those rocks don't change because your body hit them. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And so what I hear you saying is that when it comes to our presuppositions, right, we all have presuppositions that we bring to the Bible, whether we've inherited them from our family that raised us, or whether maybe we got saved in our teen years, or when we were adults, we bring certain maybe culturally influenced presuppositions. But what you're saying is that one of the most important presuppositions we have to have when we come to the Bible is a belief in objective, transcendent, eternal truth. Is that correct?
We have to understand that reason, which is our ability to perceive truth and participate in truth, that is the essence of God in us, in a sense of his image and likeness, moving through our intellect and our will.
So what
And
happens when we try to approach scripture without that presupposition?
what happens is we actually begin to misinterpret, distort, contort reality. We distort and contort the scriptures because what we've done is we've refused to use reason, and we've moved into something called, you know emotion. Basically, we've moved into something of how it makes us feel. you know
Mm,
we'll say that, well, this is the way I think, this is my truth, but what that is essentially saying is, this is the way I feel about it. Because you're not there, because a reasonable person would never say, this is my truth." That's not a reasonable statement. If you believe in truth, the very idea of truth is that it's a common understanding. It's something that exists. As It's like saying, this is my reality. Well, reality is reality. Like, it's like it's a contradiction in terms, right?
right.
The word reality means it's that's what it is, and it is what it is. That's the meaning of reality. Well, when you say this is my reality, you're contradicting yourself in your very words. So it's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So what it really means, when a reasonable person logically renders that, what it really means is, what you're saying is, this is the way I feel. This is the way I want it to be. This is the way I wish it could be. And so I'm fantasizing about what I really want, because ultimately what's leading me isn't truth, isn't reason, isn't logic, isn't the image of God in me. What's really leading me is my emotion, the way I feel, the way that I feel happiness. That feeling of happiness is what I'm really chasing. And so I'm allowing that feeling of happiness to lead me and guide me wherever I go. And that is essentially allowing your sensitive appetite, or your passions, what the Bible calls your passions, your desires, um, that are it essentially means that you're allowing your passions to go unregulated by reason. It means that you're essentially becoming an animal. And that's why you see in our society people acting in ways that are very similar to animals. not thinking about what they're doing. And that is why we have so many issues and problems in our world. We're devolving back into the ape.